What is happening, everybody? Let's talk about something more important than a box score. Let's talk about trust because it looks like the Indiana Fever's coaching staff has been caught up in a lie so blatant, they must think you can't see what's happening in broad daylight. So they're telling a simple, clean little story about Caitlin Clark's season, but the problem is it's a fantasy, and the fans, the media, no one is buying it because the official statements don't line up. The timeline is a disaster, and no one, and the trust has been shattered. So we're gonna break down how you go from mismanaging an injury to a full blown deception, and we're going to lay out the timeline of confusion, expose the second injury they tried to hide, and get into what this really means for the team and for Caitlin. And this stopped being about an injury a long time ago, and this is about a cover up. So let's just get into it. So if you start with the story they fed us when Caitlin first went down with the right groin injury on July 15th, not May. The Indiana Fever were calm, cool, and completely quiet, and they played it off like it was a minor issue, maybe day by day or day to day. But here's the first life lesson because vague answers aren't just lies in disguise, because day to day stretched into a week, then two, then a whole month. So Caitlin Clark, the woman who was an ironclad pillar at Iowa, who never missed a game in her rookie year of the season, vanished, and she was forced to sit out All Star Weekend. A massive disappointment for the league and the fans who put her there. So all while she was out, the word from the coaching staff was a broken record. Head coach Stephanie White kept repeating the same empty phrase, status quo. Press conference after press conference, she gave reporters nothing until she can get into practice, and until you guys see her practice, it's really status quo. She said recently, but while the team preached status quo, reality was screaming something else because Clark has now missed nearly 20 games. This isn't a day to day issue, it's a crisis because a player famous for her durability was suddenly being handled with kid gloves, and the lack of information felt like a deliberate strategy to obscure the truth. And that's the first sign of a breakdown in leadership. And when you have to ask yourself, what are they not telling me? The trust is already broken, and the gap between the casual status quo line and the reality of a star player's prolonged absence was the first major red flag, and it showed the pattern that wasn't about transparency but about control. So now when you pay close attention, because the timeline is where this whole story unravels, this isn't about just one injury, because our 2025 season has been a nightmare of setbacks, and the team's public handling of it has been a masterclass in how to destroy credibility. So it started before the groin issue. A left quad strain took her out 5 games in May. A left groin injury sidelined her for 2 weeks in June. And then the one big one on July 15, the right groin injury. So soft tissue injuries are tough, no doubt about that. But the team's response only created a fall of confusion. And they released a statement on July 24th saying evaluations confirming that no additional injuries or damage was discovered. And they wanted that to sound reassuring, but in hindsight, it looks like a calculated lie of omission, because things were about to get way much worse, as we know when I show you guys on the screen what I'm gonna show you. But the real bombshell came nearly 2 weeks later, and it turns out on August 7th, during a workout, Clark suffered a second separate injury, and Scott Agnes of Fieldhouse Files reported she tweaked her left ankle, resulting in a mild bone bruise. So this is her going into the game, walking in or whatever the case may be, to the game where we see a little hints of her grasping or hobbling on her ankle. And it looks regular. She's walking into the game. They're playing um, Phoenix Mercury. Nothing too crazy. Then when you go into the second clip, right? This is her basically, I believe, cheering her team on. If you want to be technical about it, 1 second. Check it out.
With the injury, and
So she grabs, if you guys can see, she's sitting there, she's cheering her team on, and then you see her
with the injury,
hobbling on
and now
the left
got stepped on by the coach, and I think
ankle,
she's going to be all right
or
based upon the
the
cut on
right
her
leg
face. But
grabbing her left ankle. And then you see the assistant coach helping her to sit down. So And then we go into Scott Agnes because he has a lot to say.
Worst thing about it, couple sources telling me, worst thing about it happened at the very end of a workout session. Just awful luck, right? You feel good. She's looking good. And then one bad step on a defensive series and boom, frustration. Because, I mean, just awful timing. Not that there's any good timing, to be clear. But now that's, excuse me, now that's something she and the team having to deal with. And it's also a situation I should make clear as well that she is working so hard, I'm told, behind the scenes, just living in the training room and making frequent trips up north to do the hyperbaric chamber. And there's a lot of phone calls and a lot of conversations. The front office, I've told, is actively involved in this. Medical staff actively involved in this. Her agents actively in this.
All right, so you guys heard that from Scott Agnes. And this happened on the very same day of her teammates. This happened on the very same day of two of her teammates suffered their own season-ending injuries. And it was a catastrophic day for the team, yet for almost 2 weeks, the organization and nothing about Clark's new injury. So if you think about what that means, the face of your franchise gets hurt again, and the leadership goes silent, and they let the status quo narrative continue, knowing full well her recovery is now seriously complicated by a new injury. And this information only saw the light of day because reporters did their jobs, not because the Fever did theirs. And this is where you cross the line from poor communication into deliberate deception. And why hide a setback from the very fans you depend on? Because the timeline doesn't lie, and it shows a pattern of downplaying severity and withholding critical information. So this brings us to the most important question: why? Why would the Indiana Fever risk their reputation and enrage their own supporters by being so dishonest? And there are a few possibilities. None of them reflect well in the organization's character. But the most generation interpretation is they were trying to protect Clark from a media frenzy. Maybe they thought revealing the whole truth, multiple soft tissue injuries plus a bone bruise, would create a circus. But true protection isn't hiding the truth. It's building a fortress of truth around your players. And this plan, if it was one, backfired spectacularly and created more drama, not less. So a more cynical and likely more accurate reason is a desperate grab for competitive advantage, and the WNBA playoff race is incredibly tight, and the 1916 Fever are fighting for seeding, not to mention that just lost their recent game, which took place last night to Nafisa Collier in the Minnesota Lynx, which I'll do another video on that. But by keeping opponents guessing about her return, they might believe they're being strategic. But here's a question for all of us: is a win that's built on a lie truly a win? And at what point does the will to win become an excuse for a lack of integrity? But the theory that cuts the deepest is that this was about managing optics and protecting ticket sales. And Clark is the engine driving WNBA viewership. We know that. And admitting she had multiple complex injuries with no clear return date could have caused panic. Were those vague updates a business decision to keep hope alive to ensure fans keep buying tickets and tuning in? So when you start prioritizing profit over principles, you already lost. And even her teammate, Sophia Cunningham, admitted on the podcast that Caitlin herself doesn't even know her own return, the person who's injured. And so at best, the coaching staff was withholding the whole truth. And they made a choice to control the narrative. And in doing so, they shattered the trust placed in them. And this calculated deception has consequences that will linger long after these injuries heal. And first and foremost is Caitlin Clark's health and career. And here is a player who was a pillar of durability. Now in just her second year, she's battling 3 separate soft tissue injuries and a bone bruise. Rushing a player back from that isn't a strategy. It's a gamble with their future. And the team says her health is a priority, but their actions raise a terrifying question. Do they have the wisdom to manage a generational talent, or will they break her? And then there's the team itself, because the Fever are in a playoff dogfight with a decimated backcourt. It's not just Clark. You got Sydney Colson, you got Eric McDonald, who are out for the year. Sophia Cunningham battling a knee injury. And then they're clinging to a playoff spot with a brutal schedule ahead. And every game Clark misses makes their mountain higher to climb. But the most profound damage is to the franchise credibility, because because you have to ask yourself, what is the most valuable thing any person or organization has? And it's their word, it's their reputation, and trust is fragile, and the Fever just took a sledgehammer to it. So fans feel like they've been played for fools, and the media has been led on a wild goose chase, and now every future injury update will be met with suspicion. And this isn't just about one season, it's about whether can anyone believe a single word this organization says going forward. So here's the bottom line. The official story doesn't match the facts. A day-to-day injury became a 2-month saga. A groin rehab was secretly complicated by an ankle injury that the team hid. And the coaching staff led by Stephanie White chose spin over substance while their season hangs in the balance. So what do you think was really going on? Is this a calculated cover-up to gain an edge, or is it catastrophic failure of leadership? I believe that is a catastrophic failure of leadership, because you can't be transparent about certain things and pick and choose one thing you want to be transparent about and then the other you want to hide because I guess you may be tired of talking about it, whatever the case may be, or tired of being held accountable, but you said something in the first place, which I believe the fans, aka consumers, aka customers, should be informed about. So you just let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And if you believe the conversations matter, hit the subscribe button and turn on your post notifications so you don't miss what's next. And then all the noise, one thing is crystal clear, that the trust is gone. And the biggest question remaining has nothing to do with strains or bruises. It's this: when Caitlin Clark finally returns to the court, what kind of organization is she returning to? And one that values her as a person, or the one that has already shown is willing to sacrifice the truth for his own convenience? So that's the question that they and we have to answer. Catch you in the next one. Peace.